Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of Hiring and Inspiring. Today's guest is Brett. Brett is let's say I'm going to introduce him as an industry veteran in the architect, design, sales world. He's been in that game for a long time. Lots of sales experience, lots of sales leadership experience. And also he's a top bloke as well. So I'm really looking forward to having a chat to him today for him to share his wisdom and just having a bit of a chat and reflecting on his career, because I know he's had a lot of success over the years. So with that introduction, Brett, welcome to the show.
Very kind of you, and it's great that we got the old stuff out of the way first. Being an industry veteran and a lot of knowledge and wisdom and all sorts of things. But no, I really appreciate the intro, and looking forward to having a chat.
Mate, great to have you. So let's start in the present. Your most recent role, your current role, director, Infinity Furniture. Talk to me about that, because it's newish. You've been there a year or so now. Talk to me about sort of how you've settled into that role, how you're finding it so far. How's it all going?
Yeah, so good place to start. We established Infinity Commercial Furniture January 2023. So whatever that is, year and a bit ago. Darren Mifsud, who's the owner and managing director, he and I probably first started talking maybe 4 or 5 years ago about the potential of setting up Infinity in Victoria. He established the business about 7 years ago in New South Wales, then set Queensland up. A few things sort of happened in between that, COVID and other sort of bits and pieces. And it's probably about mid-2022 that he and I sat down and the planets sort of aligned. So Jan 2023 we started, we've really sort of grown quite well sort of since then. We've now set up a nice showroom in Cremorne, and I've got 2 staff that have joined as well. So it's been a really interesting ride. As most people would say, we've still got a lot to do, but so far it's been really good.
Great to hear, mate. And director, I think we were talking the other day. You're still wearing a few different hats in the role. You're still out in front of customers a lot. What's the sort of a typical day, even typical week? I imagine there isn't maybe a typical one, but what would that sort of look like?
Yeah, so you've kind of summed it up well. I think the one thing that we'd sort of spoken about from day one here, and even in other roles that I've been in. You kind of realise after a while that a title is just a title, and in the end, it's about actions and getting things done. And I think that sort of rings really true for what we do here. We really are here to obviously service our clients and try and give them the best customer experience that they can have. And especially with a small team, you realise that could look very differently from day to day, and particularly in the types of things that I may need to do day to day. So, a lot of supporting the team here, making sure that we sort of hit our benchmarks in regards to how quickly we get proposals out, the types of clients that we deal with, and it can still be a lot of client-facing things that we do, but also on-site for projects and deliveries and installations. So. It can be fairly varied, but in the end, I guess it really is just about making sure that we hit our benchmarks and do our projects justice and do them properly.
Mm-hmm. And what have you been enjoying so far about the role and the company? And also, what have been some initial challenges in the last year that you've had to sort of face?
Yeah, so I think the thing that I've enjoyed the most is and it's funny. I mean, we're going to get into, I suppose, a topic now that a lot of people talk about culture, and you hear it a lot, and I think that sometimes it's all talk, and then sometimes there are businesses that back it up with actions, and I think that's the thing that struck me about Infinity, probably from even before I joined, just with some of the knowledge I had, that it was a really important aspect for the business, and something that I guess Darren had sort of instilled from day one, that there is a really, really nice culture in this business, and it's a culture of inclusion, and it's a culture of making sure that everyone feels a part of it. And that everyone is a part of it. So, I think that's been one of the really nice aspects of it is just seeing a company that doesn't take itself too seriously. And we don't get me wrong, we are professional in what we do, but we have a few laughs along the way, and we understand that nothing's perfect and things don't always go to plan. And certainly we try to rectify that and learn from it and all the other things in between. But it's nice to sort of work with a group of people that share a similar mindset, and that is that we're not we're selling office furniture. So we try not to really take ourselves too seriously, and just understand that we spend a lot of time here. Most of us probably spend more time here than we do with the people that we would love to spend time with. And really sort of just trying to grow that as a benchmark for how we go about things. And I think so far that would be the number one thing for me. It's really nice to sort of work in a company like that with a bunch of people that share those same sort of ideals. And I think, look, challenges wise, Joe, it's probably no different to any other business that's starting out. It's learning some things the hard way. Sometimes that you may have thought something was going to go one way, and then it very quickly goes the other way. I think just understanding that we need to keep it in scale as well. So a big thing for us initially was making sure that we didn't go out to too many clients. And especially when it was just me sort of, bumbling around for the first 12 months by myself, we knew that if it went too quickly, we just wouldn't be able to handle it in the way that we needed to keep people happy and keep customers happy. So I think that was the thing we did well, was that we really went out and chose what we felt were the right clients to start with. As we've sort of grown, now we're able to expand that. But I think we always want to be that business that really works closely with like-minded customers that we know we can add value to what they do.
And in terms of the clients you're working with and the sort of general market at the moment, your particular, well, how would you describe the market at the moment? How sort of buoyant is it, projects-wise, that sort of thing, compared to, I don't know, you've been in this game a long time, compared to previous times and previous years, etc. How would you describe it at the moment?
Yeah, so compared to, say, the early 1900s when I started, Joe, and just before the industrialisation age, no, I think at the moment it still can be a little bit hit and miss out there in that, I think we have sort of gotten past that COVID stage now, but there's still there still seems to be a little bit of uncertainty in some people's minds, and I think there's probably still a little bit of conservatism as well in regards to spending and people, just wanting to make sure that they're making the right decisions. So we're sort of seeing that the market's quite good, but it can also be a little bit volatile in that. It can sort of go from 0 to 100 pretty quickly, but then that's factored in. There's a lot of competition out there, and a lot of people that are all sort of going after the same thing. So we're finding it still fairly good at the moment, but there is a little bit of hurt out there still from what I hear.
Yeah, and something that struck me, quite heavily, I guess, the other day when we spoke on the phone, you said, there are still, kind of just what you mentioned, there are still challenges out there, but the team is still having success. And I asked you sort of how you're having that success, and you mentioned we're doing the basics. We're it's not. I'm not going to give you a sexy answer, Joe. It's it's maybe not what you want to hear, but we're doing the hard yards. We're getting out in front of customers. We make sure we're speaking to the right customers. We're pounding the pavements. We're just putting in the reps and doing the hard yards. And it sort of really struck me that despite market conditions, despite maybe stuff, it's the cliche, the stuff that you can't necessarily control, just focus on the things that you can. You focus on your activity, focus on making sure you are doing the right things, that's how you're seeing success in this current market. How important is that, to you, Phil, like to the team, the team success that you have had? Sorry.
Yeah, no, this is probably going to get into the boring bits a bit now, but I think there's a lot of people out there that overcomplicate sales.
Okay.
And for me, it always has been a fairly simple business and a fairly simple process. Now, that's not to say that there's not challenges and little idiosyncrasies that are in there, but I think if you really strip it back, the sales process is quite simple. And for me, there's the three key things that need to be focused on every day. And the first one is activity, but there's a word I'll put before it. It's relevant activity. Because anyone can sort of say to a rep, go out and see 30 clients. That's your target. They can walk down the road to 30 restaurants and come back and say, hey, I've seen 30 clients. But if they're not clients that are going to then build your pipeline, there's a massive difference in there, right? So relevant activity, which leads to a pipeline that's evolving, leads to sales. And I've always said that if you do those first two things right, the sales side of it will come naturally. So yeah, I do think that it's quite straightforward in that regard, and that really needs to be 95% of your focus. In sales, it's very easy to get caught up with other things, and even prioritizing other things because you enjoy doing them more. And I know we've had this chat before about eating the frog and doing those things that you don't like. Because I would say for most people in their role, if you've got 70% that you love and 30% that you don't like, you're probably doing pretty well. I'm yet to really meet anybody that loves everything in their job every day of the week, right? And if someone is going to say to me that they do, I'd be a little bit skeptical, because there has to be some things that either aren't as natural to you or you're not as comfortable with. But you've still got to do them, right? So yeah, I'm a big believer that those three things are what leads to success. And the more consistent you can be about those things on a daily basis, the more success you will actually have. So yeah, I think for us, that really has been the focus. And you'd mentioned it just before, focusing on what you can control. Wise person sort of said to me once that, if you enjoy going for a walk every day, and you do that, and then you come in one day and it's pouring with rain, you can either sit at your desk and bemoan the fact that it's raining outside and it's a horrible day, or you can get an umbrella and still go for a walk. So the bit we can't control is the weather. The bit we can control is the umbrella and still going out and maybe not enjoying it as much because it's a bit wet, but you can still do it, right? And so I think, that whole focus on what you can control is the most important thing, because otherwise you will drive yourself mad and it's a reality. So yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think just stripping it right back to the basics is something that resonates with me. It's something that I do myself or my team, if I haven't had a week or whatever, a period of time where I haven't quite got the results like I'm after, that's what I like about ourselves. You can just go back to the basics. And for me, it's what you said, the activity. So I've got this, activity, quality, and target market. So, and you can go back to those three things, like activity. Am I doing enough stuff? Calls, meetings, whatever. And then how good is the quality of those, calls, those interactions, those meetings, whatever. How well am I doing those things? And then am I doing it with the right people? And if you had a week where you're not necessarily got the results you're after, you can just go back, right, have I done enough things? How well have I done them? And have I done them with the right people? And your answer probably lies within one of those three areas. That's how I look. Is that something you'd maybe do with your team and just strip it back and be like, right, let's just go back to basics?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, I've had some good mentors over the years, and one taught me the value of your own time as well. Because I do think, especially when you come into sales, you can get caught up in just trying to please everyone. And I think, we look at it here that if we're going out to see a new client, it's as much about us learning from them as it is us talking to them about what we do. Because I think for me, I want us to be able to walk out of that meeting with a pretty good understanding of, are they the right fit for us or aren't they? And if they aren't, that's fine. It's not a waste.
Yeah.
What's a waste is continuing to pursue somebody that really is never, ever going to do what you need. It can come across sounding a little bit selfish and arrogant, but I don't think it is. I think it's actually just being realistic. Because really, in the end, what you want to be doing is having a nucleus of clients that fit your mold, so that you do have valuable activity with them all the time. Now, obviously, the key is to continue to add to that. But yeah, just having that real acknowledgement of what we stand for, what we do really well, and then trying to fit that into the clients that we go to. So, discovery sessions and things like that is really big on my agenda.
Yeah.
Because I think the more you can learn early, the better you will be down the track.
I think, the best salespeople I know, they ruthlessly disqualify.
Yeah.
As much as they do qualify, or more probably. They get a finite working list of clients rather than, as you say, trying to speak to everyone and please everyone. Makes such a good point. Keen to go back in time a little bit now and reflect a little bit on your career. If we can go back to sort of the start of your time getting into the world of sales and the A&E space and the construction building industry. How did you initially? What's the sort of story behind that? How did you initially get into that sort of world? And as the industry, what is it about that the particular space you've been in for such a long time? What is it that keeps you coming back for more?
Yeah. So, look, I think when, if I'm really honest about myself, when I was at school, I was, quite a smart student, but I never really applied myself in the way that if I had my time again, I would, right? So, I think that kind of meant I got to the end of year 12 and, I did well, but I didn't really want to then go to university. I just wanted to work. So, straight out of school, I worked for the NAB for 5 years, sort of as a graduate and a trainee, and sort of worked my way up, I think, to international banking or something at that stage, but probably realised it wasn't for me. And some mates of mine had started a furniture business. It was a second-hand furniture business, and they had a showroom in Fitzroy, and then they opened one up in South Melbourne. And they asked me to come and run the South Melbourne office for them. And to be fair, that was probably sort of my first entree into sales. It was more a showroom-based type thing. But then, that sort of just led, I guess, to some industry contacts and things like that. And Hayworth would have been my first true A&D repping role. And you can look back now with hindsight and probably realise, was I ready for it? No, not really. But it's always been for me those lessons that you take out of that. And it took me, I think, probably good 2 years before I really started to fire. But I was putting in the work; it just wasn't coming as quickly as I'd hoped. So I think, that was sort of the first sort of true repping role in furniture in that A&D space. And then, from there, I guess, just sort of progression with roles and opportunities. I love the furniture industry, and always have and always will. And I think that is the thing that does keep you sort of coming back, and continuing to do it. I love a lot of the people that I've met, the relationships, and I think for me, you sort of get to this age now, and a lot of those younger designers that you grew up with, they're now in senior, sort of roles because they've progressed and they've moved up as well, and that's really, really nice to see. So I think just a mixture of that, Joe. I kind of fell into sales, in many ways. Went back later in life and did my business degree and those types of things. But sort of just fell into it really.
I'm interested that first, proper A&E repping role you mentioned, around about the 2 year mark, you started to have success. Was there anything you did sort of differently, or what was there like a switch at that point which allowed you to have that success? Because I think, that's actually quite typical. I think in any sort of sales, but when they get into a role, it's tough the first year or so. Then you either decide maybe not for me and you get out of it. A lot of people do, or that's when yes, this is my lane. And, I found it, and then you kick on like you have.
Yeah.
How did that sort of go for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So the company I was working for at that stage, which was Hayworth, they were really successful in New South Wales, and Victoria not so much. Now I don't know the reasons for that, like specifically, but that was just the reality. So they were always kicking major goals up there, and we always sort of felt like the poor sort of stepsister down here in Victoria. And I think what it taught me was that nothing comes easy, and you have to work for it, right? So if you want success in 2 years' time, you've got to put in a hell of a lot of hard yards in that first 12 months. And to use like a sporting analogy, like almost unrewarded running, in that you're doing the running, but someone else is kicking the goals. So I kind of dug in on that, and knew that there were pressures from above. I remember sort of once I did start to have some genuine success there, the MD spoke to me one day and he said, you were within about 3 weeks of me firing you, because you just having the results, right? And so we had a laugh about it. But I sort of thought sometimes you can just be lucky, and sometimes you can be unlucky from a timing perspective. For whatever reason, for me, a lot of those yards that I'd put in, all of a sudden they just went sort of boom at the same time. But looking back in hindsight of that, if that had taken an extra 2 months, I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to get results. So, I do think that probably like most things in life, a bit of luck is involved as well. But I made sure that I stuck to the routine. I've never been an extrovert or probably what you would even call a typical sort of stereotypical salesperson. But what I was good at was sort of that structured, methodical approach to knowing these are what I believe are the keys to success. And I'm just going to keep doing them each day. And if it fails, fine, I can look myself in the mirror and I did what I thought was right. So, yeah, does that answer it?
Yeah, it does. I think that actually right at the end of it, where you just stick into the process, stick into my method and day by day, inch by inch, getting the results. Because I think, and to me, that's what actually the best salespeople do, rather than what you say the traditional, what you might think extroverted, talk the talk, that kind of salesperson. That's not, I don't know, that's not, the best salespeople, they don't actually demonstrate I'd rather someone who's reliable, shows up again and again and consistent to me than someone who is that super extroverted, can sell ice to the Eskimo type.
Yeah.
Sleazy salesperson. No, that does make a lot of sense. But I want to touch upon now your leadership journey, so to speak. You've had many sales leadership roles over the years. How would you sort of describe your journey into leadership and how you've progressed as a leader over the years? I imagine probably a learning curve at lots of different points, and this is a bit of an opportunity to sort of pat yourself on the back a bit. How have you progressed as a sales leader over the years that has allowed you to lead teams, build teams as you have, and the main sort of traits that you try and demonstrate as a leader now?
Yeah. So I think like most people, Joe. Sorry, I shouldn't say like most people. Like a lot of people in sales roles, they at some point will get selected, and someone will say, "Hey, we want you to no longer be a sales rep. We want you to be sales manager." I don't know that that's always the right thing. As in, I don't necessarily think just because you're a good salesperson, you are going to be a great sales manager, because I think there's some key differences in there. And I think, for me, it's those experiences that you learn along the way that really, progress your career and turn you into a better leader. So I think for me, the initial stages, you kind of still wore the two hats, and you were part sales and you were part managing and doing all things in between. But yeah, I've always sort of felt that you really need to understand that you are going into something completely different when management, and to the point that it's no longer about you. It's now about your people and your team, and understanding that no longer is your success defined by you. Your success is now defined by your people. So if you can't get them on board and you can't get them, on the same page as you, you might be still successful as an individual, but if they're failing, you're failing. So I think that's a really important thing to consider in looking at leadership. It really is more about other people than it is about you, and how you can sort of get the best out of people. I think along the way for me, the other thing that sticks out is it's those experiences that you have to have along the way in your career that really define how you go about things into the future, or they should. So, things that get thrust upon you in a role that you've had no experience in whatsoever, but all of a sudden you've got this title and you need to do this, and you're sitting there thinking, I don't know that I can do this. I don't know that I can do it. And then you either have that moment where you say, no, this is too hard, I can't do it, or you do it and you may not do it spectacularly, but you've still confronted it and you've done it and you've achieved it. That I think you can then look back on and say, yeah, okay, next time I will do this differently.
Yeah.
Because there's no real playbook for that. And I think what over the years, leadership and certain situations, particularly with delivering bad news to people, and whether that's telling them that their job no longer exists, or that we're shutting down this office because of whatever reasons. What it's really taught me is the difference between empathy and sympathy. And I think that was probably the game changer for me, was understanding that in a lot of those moments, you had to have empathy for their situation, but you couldn't let sympathy creep in, because then you wouldn't make the decision that you had to make for the betterment of the group or the future.
Right.
So I've always tried to, sort of deliver that type of stuff with empathy and dignity and those types of things. And, try to sort of put yourself into their shoes to understand how they'd be feeling, but still realise, regardless, the decision needs to be made. So it needs to be done in the best way possible. They're probably some of the key things that I've kind of learnt over time. Not always well, but over time.
And your sort of leadership style, how would you sum up?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny, like it's like that moment, Joe, when you walk past a shop window and you catch your reflection and you think, that's not me. And it is, but you're just not looking at yourself enough in a day. But other people, sort of see you differently. So my leadership style, that's better coming from the people that you're actually leading.
Sure, yeah.
For me, I would like to hope that it's open and collaborative, because I know that a lot of the people that I work with, they're way smarter in certain areas than what I am. And if I can't tap into that and allow them to use that, I'm not doing my job as a leader. I'd hope open and collaborative. And I think too, one of the other things that I'm really big on is normalising feedback. I always sort of felt in my days that as soon as the word feedback came up, people would be in the fetal position, because feedback was always bad, right? Like you rarely sort of got great feedback in a work type role. So one of the things I've really tried to do over the years is just normalising feedback. So really, it's not good, it's not bad, it's just feedback, and these are things we're going to learn from, that we're going to use to be better into the future. So in the hope that when you do sit down with your staff, they're not sitting there thinking, "Oh, this is going to be terrible." If it is something that is an improvement opportunity, all we're doing is discussing how that works, and what
Yeah.
needs to be done going forward to improve that situation. So, I've always been really big on that, because I think I've always found that you don't really learn a lot from the stuff you're good at. What you learn from are the things that, you weren't as good at. That's where the learning comes in.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about this the other day about delivering feedback, and I think it's if you're a manager, you've got a team below who, ideally speaking, they're receptive to feedback. They want to take it on, and they're open to learning, and they want to hear about ways they can improve. You do occasionally get individuals that aren't great at receiving feedback. If it is constructive, or ways to improve, they can get defensive. We all know the type, right? Have you got any tips, or how would you go about maybe experiences over the years delivering or dealing with someone in your team that maybe isn't great at dealing with that feedback?
Yeah, well, I think maybe not the specific answer for it, but what I've always tried to do is, again, if we go back to those three keys that I spoke about at the start, the relevant activity, the pipeline, and the sales side of it, is just making sure at the end of each month, when we sit down to talk about where we're at, that we are always talking about those three things, not just one, right? So, because someone can have a great sales month, but all that may mean is that everything they were working on fell in that 1 month, right? So
Yeah.
the pipelines, there's nothing there, the activity hasn't been great. And vice versa, if someone's had a not so good sales month, but their pipeline's brimming and there's, so much that's about to drop and the activity's been great. So I think, just making sure that there's those three focuses, so that people are aware all the time that I need to improve in my activity, or I need to improve in the pipeline, or I need to improve in the sales, that they're all mixed into one. It's not just your sales are bad. But we're looking at those three things all along, just to hopefully sort of minimize people falling off the cliff.
Mm.
I think that's really important to no matter whether it's been a great month of sales or not a great month of sales, that we're still focusing on those two things behind all of that, because that really is what drives sales.
Mm. And we spoke a little while back about you mentioned about that person who has a bit of success, and at some point in time in the sales role, they might get selected to be a sales manager, a sales leader for the business. And they're making that transition from salesperson to sales manager. Given you've done that and had experience, what advice would you give that person when they are in that sort of transition phase into leadership?
Yeah, I think check the ego in at the door. Yeah,
Right.
because it really does become way more about your people than it does about you anymore. And if you can get that right really early, you'll have, I think you'll have a lot of success. Understand too that probably 90, this might be a bit of an exaggeration, but let's just say 80% of your week will be spent dealing with people.
Yeah.
And if you can get yourself a psychology degree, go and get it, because that will really, really help. But I think just that understanding that all of a sudden you are going from being an individual to being somebody that really needs to lead and grow a team. And that there's a lot of different dynamics within that, and that you will need to probably reflect a lot. You will need to learn a lot as you go, and you'll need to understand that each person's different. So the quicker you can tap into what success looks like for them and what
Yeah.
they are interested in, the easier it will become to sort of navigate your way through a lot of those conversations with the different people.
I think someone asked a similar question to you once, described that as switching the mindset from I to we.
Yeah.
It's no longer, it's just if you're still thinking about, you're closing deals or whatever, your individual, whatever, compared to the team, and that's when you struggle. And a lot of people do that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, love that, mate. So, a couple of broader, more bigger picture questions to sort of to wrap up. In your career to date, if there's a sort of a moment which, or the biggest sort of career mantra or lesson learned over the time, something you have that you picked up over at some point that you will always go back to, and that could be, apply to your life, a life outside of work as well. What would you say that would be?
I think I think just for me, it's always just like remain humble. Like there's a lot of things and there's a lot of people out in the world, and we make up a small part of it as an individual. Just remain humble, and also um under try to, as best you can, understand that there are people going through different circumstances every day of the week, right? And I've always felt that for the most part, when people go home at the end of the day and shut their door, most of us don't really know what is going on in their lives, right? So have empathy, have understanding that people do have a lot of things that they're dealing with and working with, and really just do your best to be a good person, right? Because it's a lot easier than the other option. Um, and putting smiles on people's faces and making them feel sort of important and included, I think, is really valuable. And I think too, for me, it was always getting to that point where you could take on board feedback without sort of feeling the bristles on the back of your neck sort of coming up. And I remember one of my early bosses, and I won't swear on your podcast, Joe, but was sitting down one day, and I thought I was doing pretty well, and I was doing pretty well. And I remember him saying to me, he said, "Brett, just wanted to say you are really, really good out in front of clients. Like, you're one of the better ones that I've worked with out in front of clients." And I thought, "Oh, how good is this?" And he said, "But you're effing lazy." I thought, wow, okay, that brought me a couple of notches.
Yeah,
And his point was, he said, so if you're really good out in front of 5, make it 10, because imagine how much better your results will be. And so I've always tried to understand and acknowledge what my weaknesses are, and because I think for most people, your weaknesses never disappear; they're always lurking in the background somewhere. But having that knowledge and understanding of it really enables you to sort of focus on it a bit more and say, yeah, okay, I don't want to procrastinate. I want to move forward and make these decisions and
yeah,
move on to the next thing. So, I think for me, it's really always just been, hopefully, that I'm continuing to learn. I'm not perfect and I'm not the finished product, but just continuing to learn and hopefully, getting.
yeah, yeah. Love that. Just, I guess, to just sum those up a little bit, what I took from that is, the first one is just be cool to people.
Yeah.
Like, because that's the thing that people remember. No one really remembers your performance against target or whatever. What they remember is how you treat them.
Correct.
That's the thing that sticks around, and that's your sort of reputation that carries with you in the long term. That's it's the only thing that really matters, really, when you sort of boil it all down. And the second thing about sort of leaning into your weakness, I just think that's difficult. People tend, as we spoke of before, is people tend to focus on what you're good at, and that's what you stick in that. And if you can just sort of lean into that discomfort, and then it's like, right, instead of just going through the day doing the stuff I normally do, where can I push myself?
Yeah.
Where can I, find an area that is a bit, just that whole doing the uncomfortable thing, whether it be, I know I'm not very good at whatever.
Yeah.
And let's work on that. And that's how you, as we spoke about, that's how you improve. So, mate, that's great. Noted and learnt from. Let's really appreciate that wisdom there. Couple more closing questions. You're doing some great stuff at Infinity at the moment. What do you sort of feel the future holds for that business? I know you're growing. The next couple of years, what can I expect from you?
Oh, look, I think it's just to continue what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Always, I guess, striving to provide the best customer service that we can for our clients. growing that list of clients, but still making sure they're relevant clients. I think, that from that there will be natural growth, like in regards to the amount of people that we have here, and just I guess putting ICF Victoria more on the map, and getting a greater share of the market.
Yeah.
And yeah, just continuing to grow, and I think from that other things will occur. But I'd love for the goals to sound really cool and
Yeah.
outlandish, but I do believe that it's it's getting the simple things right. Sorry, getting the basics right and doing them consistently every day will lead us to growth and opportunity.
And those growth and those opportunities, the idea around success, what does that actually sort of mean to you? And this is more like the why, and it could be personal. I guess it doesn't have to be work. What's the sort of reason that you get out of bed and do everything? Do everything that you do every day.
Yeah, well, I think for me this has been like an amazing opportunity to be given, to sort of be a part owner in the business, and really have that chance, I guess, to put into practice a lot of the things that theoretically I've thought about over my career. So yeah, I think that for me, success will be defined by a few things. I mean, one obviously is growth and sales. I mean, you can't avoid that. That's the reality. But also having a group of like-minded people sort of come on board. I think I'm now at an age and a stage in my career where I do want to be more selective about the people that that we bring on and that we work with. Like, it's really important that they do have similar mindsets, but also that I hope they walk out the door each day thinking, yeah, you know what, like I enjoyed my day today. And it's a good group of people to work with, and I feel a part of that team, and I feel a part of what we're building towards. So yeah, I think for me that sort of defines a lot of the success, is that we really are a business that allows people that are working within to find their successes as well. So really, yeah, for me, more about ensuring that we can provide a platform for these guys to to be able to sort of do a lot of the things that that they'd like to do in life too.
Mate, that's a perfect way to wrap this episode up. Really, really great stuff. Thank you very much for coming on today and sharing all that. Really love chatting to you. Every time I talk to you, I learn something from you. And that episode was a classic example. So thank you for sharing all that. And you're doing some great stuff at the moment with Infinity by the sound of things. So long may that continue. Once again, mate, thank you for coming on. I appreciate everything.
My pleasure, Joe. Thanks for the invite, and mate.
Stay in touch, mate. Thank you.
See ya.